Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is an important topic, and we're going to talk about navigating trauma and resilience, and some ideas for family therapists about this topic. I'm mostly thinking about family therapists who are based in the United States, and there would probably be difference if you were located in doing work in different parts of the world. And I can only touch the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot for us to think about in regards to this topic. But yeah, let's jump in with that. So part of it is I always think about we need to look at the current context. And so one important context is sort of where we're at in the moment, in particularly in regards to U.S. Political policies around this. So the policy landscape is that there are really restrictive asylum laws that have been put in place. Refugee admission caps have sharply been reduced. Family separation policies are still active. Many families are being torn apart for in different ways. If you turn on the news, you see that ICE and deportation fears are common events, and that's leading to chronic stress for undocumented families or for families who are legally in the process of seeking asylum. And then much of the support that used to be in place has disappeared. There's been 20,000 something humanitarian aid workers that have been laid off since 2025, since January of 2025. And then nonprofit support systems have been really severely strained. Those that still exist have taken on some of the burden that previously had been that there have been humanitarian aid workers available for. And I'm thinking about what this is doing to those impacted by this, but also those who are implementing it. I always think about Paulo Freire's concept in his book Pedagogy of the Press, where he says, dehumanization, which marks not only those whose humanity has been stolen, but also those who have stolen it, is a distortion of the vocation of becoming more fully human. And so I think that there is. I don't know the right word, but there are wounds that are happening. There are um, there's dehumanization that's happening even by those who are um, contributing to this. Okay, so who are we talking about? There's a lot of different groups, and the categories that they fit in sometimes overlap, but they also have some distinctions. So a refugee, formerly recognized by the UNHCR or a host government, they've fled persecution based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, sexual orientation, or group membership. So there's legal protection and there's supposed to be a resettlement pathway. There are asylum seekers. Those are those who have applied for refugee status but await a decision, and they kind of live in a legal limbo, often for years, with restrictive work rights and limited services. There's a chronic stress that can be occurring because there's such uncertainty in their lives. And then there's undocumented or displaced. These are people who have been forced to flee but without legal status. And they may have survived conflict, climate disaster, or gang violence. They may be economic violence. There's a number of different reasons why people do this, but they have some of the highest vulnerability because they have the least access to resources. So long before they ever come in and see you, or before you meet with them, they have faced a lot of different challenges. There's some we could break it into at least three, and there's many more. But there's pre-flight, where they're experiencing persecution, violence, disaster. Most people don't want to leave their home. Most people don't want to leave their country. Most people don't want to leave their family and friends and community. It takes some extreme situations for that to occur. So for some, they're witnessing or experiencing trauma, and they're facing sort of an impossible decision under pressure. Sometimes they're making this decision not for their own well-being, but for the well-being of their children, etc. So flight, the process, like the stories you can hear, the traumatic, the difficult stories you can hear about the moment they leave until they arrive to their destination can be really horrific. There's dangerous border crossings, detention, and family separation, exploitation, abuse in transit, and prolonged uncertainty. And so there can be also a range of time. There are children who were born in this portion of the process, and maybe are now 8 years old because they've been in camps or different situations. They're also facing things like hunger and lack of access to potable water, and then constant fear of violence. Then there's arrival and resettlement. So again, that's often a state of legal limbo. If they're going through the formal process, there's the interview process, there's housing instability, there's poverty, cultural dislocation, maybe there's language barriers, and I'm going to talk about some of the ways that that can impact families and children. There's loss of roles, status, community, and by loss of roles, like maybe they're highly educated in their home country. Maybe they've earned multiple degrees, but none of those are recognized once they arrived. So they may find themselves doing a very different type of job, and often not making very much, and often very hard labor. So the mental health picture, as you can imagine, just hearing those three phases, it is profound. The impact that can have. So if you look a little bit at the research and what it tells us, that about 20 to 80%, I mean that's a huge range, but of refugees experience mental health disorders. Now it's hard to pin down the exact numbers because it's also hard to research this population because they're very fearful and not trusting of many organizations. So, but 1 in 3 meets the criteria for depression or post-traumatic stress disorder. And if you think about it, 31 million plus children displaced globally. Um, so if you think about like attachment, you think about all the things that you consider important for a child to thrive, and how that could be impacted by this. So why the 20 to 80% range in itself is a clinical finding. That spread isn't measurement error. It reflects how much context matters. Country of origin, pre-flight circumstances, resettlement conditions, family intactness, community support, and the time since arrival all shape outcomes dramatically. There's no single refugee mental health profile. So when you're sitting in front of a person, you may have stories, but don't let that story be more informative to you than the person sitting in front of you. And then think about the standard models that you have. I mean, I've talked with some of you about this. Like 95% of our approaches come from the United States, when the United States only represents 5% of the global population. And so we're not drawing on the full healing and change practices that are available worldwide. And some of our practices really miss the mark. So I use CBT all the time. I draw on it, but I also recognize its limitations. If I'm thinking about working with this population, for example, it focuses on changing thought patterns. It feels reductive when clients face systemic injustice. It treats distress as internal, not relational, not political. There's so many other ways, other lenses we could put on for this. It doesn't address moral injury adequately, and standard career loss models miss the spiritual or the existential dimensions. I've I feel like I should get I don't know, some sort of credits for sales for the book Crazy Like Us, about how much damage we've done exporting our ideas and not drawing on and learning about healing and change practices from other parts of the world. One of the things I do think is helpful is to think about things from a more systemic perspective, which is one of the strengths that I think family therapists bring to this. So every career and life decision is part of a relational matrix. People are making those choices. Again, someone giving up a good position, a job, or some security in their life because it's protecting their children. That's a decision that's been made in a relational way. consciousness raising that Freire talks about. Part of what I think we can do is to help clients develop critical views of their world and not to just accept that. And by what I mean by that is think about all the ways of internalization. Think of the bombardment of messages about immigrants that are on in society, and think about how any kind of message like that propaganda can start to be absorbed. People can depression is an individualistic lens. I have depression as opposed to I make sense in the context of this hellish reality that is going on. I like to sometimes draw on the ideas of Bowen's differentiation, sort of stepping back from the emotional patterns and trying to help people to act intentionally. Um, I think for mental health workers, sometimes this kind of work is not rewarded, but some part of it is that we're shifting from just doing jobs to doing something that feels like a mission or is it sort of a spiritual thing. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how for both therapists and for refugees that we work with, there's some spiritual aspects that are occurring that are often not tuned into. I like to draw narrative therapy, sort of reauthor their stories of loss and resilience, not minimizing it, not saying that those are not real, but giving a thicker story, maybe helping them not only realize sort of the struggles that they've had, but also the resilience that they've shown. The family therapy advantage, we tend to look at the macro a little bit more than some other approaches. One of the most important things I ever took from pragmatics of human communication is the Bible of family therapy, in my view, is the idea that context matters. Context is clinical data. So MFTs treat environment, policy, culture, family system as part of the presenting problem, not just background noise. We could do better at that. I'm currently into the idea of um, critical geography, thinking about how the spaces in which we've been embedded shape how we think and what we do and what we don't do. Family system as both a wound and a resource. So migration reshapes roles, hierarchies, boundaries. The same family system that carries trauma can also generate extraordinary resilience. Um, Relational healing over individual correction. So refugees rarely suffer alone. It's a community rupture, separation from kin, and role inversion. I think about Dr. Leticia Gonzalez's dissertation, where she looked at how hierarchies in families sometimes were impacted because parents were so dependent on their children who were gaining English faster to become the translators, and so then the children got so involved in navigating the system, and there was some dependency that could emerge for folks. And then intersectionality as a standard practice, race, gender, class, legal status, and nationality intersects constantly in this work, as do infinite other things. Systems thinking is built for multi-layered complexity, and so make sure you do that. Make sure you're paying attention to those intersecting variables, and not just focusing on one stream. So sometimes I think it's helpful to normalize and to make overt the covert. So naming a moral injury can be very helpful and therapeutic. It's a concept your clients may not have words for, but you can help them to do this. So moral injury, the distress experienced when individuals witness or participate in acts that violate their deeply held moral beliefs, or when institutions they trust fail them catastrophically. So some examples of this, and there's others, but survival guilt. Why did I survive when my neighbor didn't? That can be extremely common, even if unnamed. Complicity shame, like did I betray my people by leaving, especially when the departure, maybe put some burdens on other family members, or there were some people that you would like to take care of, but you prioritized taking care of your children, etc. Sometimes there's a great sense of institutional betrayal. Governments, aid agencies, host communities that maybe promised safety, or at least had the image of them providing safety, and then they failed to provide it. A very common one I'm hearing is that Maybe they felt like maybe their faith community would be part of their support system, but churches ended up not being a safe haven, which is linked to another very common thing that I've heard is a disruption, where they start to question some of the core spiritual beliefs. Where was God? Spiritual crisis interwoven with the trauma and not separate from it. And then one of the very painful things I've been hearing is that it's very painful to witness those who are claiming to be of the same faith celebrating their loss and their pain. It's leading to many people to really reevaluating their spiritual beliefs. So as a therapist, I think it's important that you're tuning into spiritual wounds that might be occurring. So some practical tools are at least a start to that. Maybe you could do a cultural genogram, map out culture of origin and the current national context separately, explore the organizing principles, pride, shame issues, and where they converge and conflict. And then you're trying to uncover generational narratives that might be shaping things that are currently going on. I like narrative therapy for many reasons, but refugees often arrive with a thin survival narrative. So if you could externalize the problem from I'm not broken, but the displacement has contributed to this, and then help reauthor towards a story that honors resilience alongside loss. It's not minimizing. Like I like the idea of the different stories, and maybe only certain stories are getting airtime, and we're thickening the story by talking about other parts of their true story. That's not saying this didn't happen. It's just saying that this also happened. I hope that makes sense. Clinical documentation, a little side thing about this. So just assume anything that you write in your notes, someone who does not wish well for your patients might have access to those at some point. So use minimal identifiable information, maybe use pseudonyms, avoid recording immigration status unless clinically essential. Write every note knowing that it could be subpoenaed. And then trauma-informed documentation equals dignity in how you go about writing up about your case notes. And then some of you might be using interpreters, and I think this is a really important thing. Dr. Jennifer Young has set up a whole organization. If you're interested in this, you can reach out to me. Matching competent, trained interpreters with therapists who would like to provide um, services to people in this, like, having this experience. So a qualified interpreter is a clinical partner, not a phone call. So there's processes that I think you should engage in, like brief them before sessions, debrief after, assess for vicarious trauma, do culture broking, explaining the context, not just words, is a clinical skill. We want to make sure that the interpreter is understanding the intentionality behind the words that we're using. So, just intersectionality in the therapy room. Think about legal status, gender and family role, race and ethnicity, nationality and language, religion and spirituality, and class and economic status. And be mindful about the family role shifts. Again, I mentioned the migration often inverts hierarchies, children becoming cultural interpreters for parents, women gaining independence that partners resist, elders losing authority. These shifts lead to real uh, complicated dynamics, and family therapists are trained in doing this, but we need to be mindful about the context that might lead to some of these changes happening. And then system maps in session, draw it out, externalize the system. But by this, I mean there might be 20 different services in the community um, that they need to interact with as they're in the process of asylum seeking. You being able to help clarify what those groups are, those organizations are, those resources are within the community can be very therapeutic and very powerful. I like Ignacio Martin Barro, sort of the founder of liberation psychology, who said that anything that helps alleviate pain and suffering is therapeutic. Sometimes we limit too much to just the models when we might be connecting people to others. Anyways, anything that helps. Let's do more of that. And then this is not easy. This is painful. Um, be mindful about the impact of witnessing some of the things that you'll witness as or you'll hear as you're talking to people who are refugees or asylum seekers. Um, you can lead to vicarious trauma. It can lead to moral distress when systems are failing. It can lead to hypervigilance, which can lead to burnout. So we want to be mindful of that. It can raise some real existential questions about your own privilege and complicity. Yeah, and burnout when the gap between the need and the capacity is so vast. So let's go back to basics. Let's do regular supervision. Let's journal. Let's think about. Let's go to our own therapist. Let's talk with trusted colleagues and name our own moral injuries that are occurring. Normalize rest. Hypervigilance doesn't equal commitment. Uh, you can go out to a movie. You can spend time with friends. You can do your basic self-care uh, so that you have energy to continue doing the work. Build peer support. Don't process this work all alone. Advocacy as healing. Channel distress into constructive action, and then know your limits and refer. Again, connecting people to other services when it's beyond what you're able to do, legal, medical, etc. That's also clinical work. So um, um, uh, do that. So I end with Ignacio Martin Barros quote. He says the principal role of the psychologist or the family therapist or the mental health worker or the healer is to unmask the dehumanizing ideologies and practices that exist in society. So your MA training shouldn't be politically neutral. It is a tool. So use it and be mindful that therapists, psychologists have often been the tool of the state and been used to be part of the oppressive uh, uh, forces. Um, so be really mindful about what you're doing. Is it helping? Our first task is to do no harm. Are we avoiding doing harm? And then are we what can we do that might also actually lead to healing and change for people? Okay, a few thoughts, and I will end there. And there's so much more dialogue to have about this topic.